everybody's worst beliefs and what Almanis had told the FBI, that in fact there were victims down there. And it's almost surreal. You see the camera going down and being lowered and lowered and lowered, and eventually it comes across the motionless body of Mr. Karabatsi, and you could see the weight still attached to the bodies. And it then found Mr. Safiev near the same location.
And the horror isn't over. Almanis had told investigators there were more victims than the feds even realized.
And Mr. Almanis started off with some shocking news, and that's that there was a fifth victim, a man subsequently identified as Meyer Muscatel.
It was both horrible, and yet a part of me felt relieved, because I finally found out what I already knew, and that he was murdered. It was important for us to know the truth, and we did.
But in this case, the truth hurts. All 5 of Mikkel's victims have been thrown into the reservoir.
These bodies were barely recognizable. It's just, laying the pain on top of the pain on top of the pain. And it never goes away. And I think that's why these families are scarred so deeply. It's just because it's horrific, and then it's more horrific, and then it's more horrific.
Alex Umansky's family, who first got the authorities involved, had hoped all along that Alex would come home alive. Instead, they learn he has been dead for more than 2 months.
I think I was numb. I still am. There is no conclusion, as people say. There is no closing, as you see in the movies.
At least the family knew that the bad guy was behind bars. Old Yuri had traded in his chinchilla coats and Encino mansion for an orange jumpsuit and a flea-infested mattress. And still, he thought he could outsmart the law.
Next, a true story of vigilante justice.
No Hollywood writer could have ever dreamed this scenario.
To make $50 million kidnapping wealthy immigrants. Now, just $48.8 million shy of his goal, he's stuck in a prison cell while his accomplice, Einar Almanis, sings to the feds. But Mikkel isn't about to take it lying down.
Yuri Mikkel seems to always be thinking, observing, trying to exploit any situation, including what he perceives to be weaknesses. And as soon as Mikkel got into that facility, he started trying to figure out how he could get out.
The escape plan was quite sophisticated and quite elaborate. The first thing that he had them smuggle in were a couple of cell phones.
Once he got a cell phone, he was able to call his girlfriend on the outside and have her wire money to individuals who could use that money to buy tools.
And incredibly, Mikkel is able to get everything past the guards.
A hardware store of tools came into the facility, including a set of 2-foot bolt cutters, tin snips, wire cutters, razor blades, hacksaw handles, really anything you could imagine that could be used to cut concrete or metal.
Unfortunately for Mr. Mikkel, it was not a particularly big secret that he was boring a hole in his wall of his cell.
A fellow inmate rats on Mikkel, and guards tear apart his cell.
It was quite jarring to remove that mirror off the wall and see a hole that was 18 inches by 12 inches into rebar. It certainly was far enough along to send shivers down my spine.
And just to show the arrogance and the vanity of a person like Yuri Mikkel, they also found one item that they didn't expect to find.
Yuri Mikkel brought in a video camera into the facility because he wanted to basically videotape his escape and then provide the tape to a news magazine show. He is a very smart man, but he overplayed his hand in that case.
There was so much evidence against these guys that it took almost 5 years for prosecutors to collect it all. Finally, in 2006, Mikkel and his gang go on trial.
I don't know how the families endured it. I think it was hatred, at least on the part of some of the victims' families. The hatred that they felt allowed them, gave them the energy, the wick to go down to that courtroom every day.
I want to see those bastards. I was ready to kill them myself, to rip them apart. Those killers.
As for Yuri Mikkel, he couldn't have cared less.
He had almost a flippant attitude about the proceeding, as if his life didn't depend on what happened there. In fact, during one point, he refused to even attend the trial. He would sit in the back room and watch the whole thing on videotape. He just didn't take it seriously.
Unfortunately for Mikkel and his partner, Georgijus Kadamovis, the jury did take it seriously.
The jury was out deliberating for approximately 2 hours before they came back and found that both defendants should be executed for their crimes.
As for Petro Krylov, the rat who turned Umansky over to the killers in the first place, he was tried separately and sentenced to life in prison instead of death. That should give him plenty of time to reflect on his unspeakable crimes.
It's actually perfect. Somebody like him needs to spend 23 hours a day in the 4x6 cell, deteriorating over time. I want him to spend every single moment of his miserable rest of his physical life in that cell, just thinking whatever he did and just dying in that cell. And yes, I am very vicious in this regard. It's very personal.
Mikkel, Kadamovis, and Krylov have all filed notice that they intend to appeal their convictions. Thanks to his testimony, Einar Altmanis got a sentence of just 23 years. Mikkel's accomplice in Russia is beyond reach of American justice and has not been charged with a crime. Over 4 months, Mikkel and his gang tortured and killed 5 innocent people with less remorse than most people feel swatting a fly.